The real reason Salafis don't celebrate Mawlid. Why don't they celebrate Mawlid? The real reason is because they love the Prophet ﷺ too much to ever add something to the deen that was not from it. They love his Sunnah so much that they would never add something to the Sunnah thinking that this addition was from it, because they're so careful and they love the Prophet ﷺ so much. Now, let me ask you, someone who studies, they sit down and they study a Hadith for one day, they're probably going to send much more ṣalāh on the Prophet ﷺ than someone who spends a night running around, jumping around with a bunch of Sufis dancing, making noise, and maybe every once in a while singing together some ṣalāh on the Prophet ﷺ. So, if you really love the Prophet ﷺ, then what you would be doing, instead of just doing some crazy festival one night a year, what you would be doing is you would be reading and studying an-Nabī. What you would be doing is you would be reading and studying the Seerah week in and week out. Every single week you would be studying the Seerah because of your love for the Prophet ﷺ. And if you really love the Prophet ﷺ, you would be reading Riyadh every single day or every single week at least, and going through and studying the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And I hope by the time that you finish this video that you've had a bunch of times and chances to say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Also, if you really love the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, then what you would also do is you would be the most careful people to ever ascribe something to the deen that he practiced that wasn't actually subscribed to it. All right. Now, someone might say, why do you think this is Bidah? Why do you say this is Bidah and all these other things? We're just remembering the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and learning about his Seerah and all these other things. If this is as you say, then I'm very happy that everyone is doing this, and you should do it more often. I would tell you add a couple days every week and try to do this weekly. Try to do this daily. Try to do this at least monthly then. Why do you have to do it just one time a year and make this special occasion about it? All right, so let's say you do want to do it a certain time of the year. Is there any problem with that? No, I don't have any problem with you remembering the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam every single year. Great. I think you should do it monthly. I think you should do it weekly. This is also even better, especially on like the Friday nights, meaning like the Thursday nights as we would understand it, like Laylatul Jum'ah, or again Friday morning and whatnot, because this is a time when you could increase your ṣalāh on the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and it is a prescribed time every single week to increase your ṣalāh on the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So I hope that you all will have a great time remembering the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam throughout every single week of your life and throughout every single month of your life, that you would make more of an effort than just saying every year we're going to get a bunch of treats, run around, jump in the streets, and go make a bunch of beats. And that's way too much for me. And I would much rather sit down, have some classes with some people and learn the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or study something from the Seerah. This to me is much better. All right, now say I would say to the people that say, like so many people of the ulama, they allowed this. All right, great. But do they allow dancing? No, they don't allow dancing. Do they allow jumping around and making a fool of oneself in a masjid? No, they don't allow jumping around making a fool of oneself in the masjid. Do they allow free mixing with people? Do they allow making beats and playing musical instruments? No, they don't allow this. So whatever you guys are doing, keep it halal and make sure that you're not doing those other things that are absolutely munkar. As far as people that have a problem with the Mawlid, then you should realize that this is an area of valid difference of opinion, and there should be no inkar on someone in this matter, on both sides of the fence. Yes, there are people from the very beginning that said that this is munkar, Bidah, innovation, and if somebody holds that from the ulama, and you have some ammi that comes up and says, I believe what this alim said about this Bidah, munkar, innovation in the deen, all right, then you should leave him at that and not go any further than this and not get mad at him because he's following ulama. And if somebody is going to the Mawlid celebration and all it is a nice calm gathering, reading some Seerah, and they're remembering the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, maybe they recite the Burda or something of this sort in remembrance of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, then leave them be. Like, if they want to do this, as long as there's no other munkar happening, then this in and of itself isn't the real issue at hand. And if it is an issue, then it's an issue according to some of the ulama, not according to all of them. So this would be left to ulama to talk about this issue. And the most that lay people would do is say, you know what, the Sheikh Fulan, he said this. That's the most a layperson should do in this matter. Because in essence, the Mawlid, in essence, is an area of scholarly difference of opinion when it comes to the essence of the theoretical concept of making one day out of the year that you remember the Prophet ﷺ. You get together and maybe you recite some qasa'id and whatnot, and you have lots of ṣalāh on the Prophet ﷺ. That's no, like, this in and of itself isn't wrong. The problem is ascribing this as a particular day as a part of the deen. This is where we'd say, you know what, that's not necessary. We can do this in general without making anything specific. And if somebody wants to get in on this issue and say that it in general is munkar and all these other things, then of course, like, you're going into an area of scholarly difference of opinion, and there shouldn't be inkar done by the awam especially. So anyways, try to increase your love for the Prophet ﷺ by loving those who the Prophet ﷺ loved, of the Muslims and the believers. And also a last note is, the people who do go to the Mawlid and they do these things out of love for the Prophet ﷺ, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he talks about that they will get rewarded for their love for the Prophet ﷺ. So increase your love for the Prophet ﷺ, and don't be upset at people for loving the Prophet ﷺ. Whether their love for the Prophet ﷺ leads them to Mawlid, or whether their love for the Prophet ﷺ makes them leave Mawlid, then realize that we are Muslims and we should be loving the Prophet ﷺ and loving the rest of our brothers and sisters, and that this difference of opinion really shouldn't go out of hand. But if you see someone doing munkar, then change it with your hand. If you can't change it with your hand, change it with your tongue. If you can't change it with your tongue, then change it with your heart, and that's the weakest part of Iman. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.